Welcome back to Take Action News. David Shuster here. It has been just about a week since Kansas City Chiefs football player Jovan Belcher killed his girlfriend Cassandra Perkins at their home, and then just a horrible story, and then drove with a handgun to Arrowhead Stadium, where he thanked the Chiefs general manager Scott Pioli and coach Romeo Crennel for all they had done for him. The men tried to persuade Belcher to put the gun down, but when police arrived, Belcher moved behind a vehicle in the practice parking lot, knelt down, and shot himself in the head. Over the last week, there's been a huge discussion about the NFL, how they handled it, about the role of guns. Joining us now is Dave Zirin. He writes for The Nation, our favorite sports writer, who writes not only on sports, but also all great things to talk about in our society, and also some of the not-so-great things. Dave Zirin, thanks for coming on the program.
Oh, great to be here, David. Thank you.
So I want to set this up. Here's how Bob on Sunday night in the midst at halftime of an NFL football game. Listen.
Handguns do not enhance our safety. They exacerbate our flaws, tempt us to escalate arguments, and bait us into embracing confrontation rather than avoiding it. In the coming days, Jovan Belcher's actions and their possible connection to football will be analyzed. Who knows? But here, wrote Jason Whitlock, is what I believe. If Jovan Belcher didn't possess a gun, he and Cassandra Perkins would both be alive today. The second half is next from Dallas.
As Bob Costas quoting Kansas City-based writer Jason Whitlock. Dave Zirin, what was your reaction when you first heard Costas' remarks?
Well, my first reaction was that it was incredibly brave and also out of character with everything that I had seen on Sunday. I thought Sunday, all the broadcasts, both on Fox, on the NFL Network, and on CBS, were frankly very shameful displays of decontextualize what had taken place in Kansas City. Not once in the broadcast did you hear the words Jovan Belcher, Cassandra Perkins, or murder. Suicide was mentioned several times. The Kansas City players suffering the suicide of a teammate. But they made a point to decontextualize it, and if you ask them why they were doing so, they would probably say, well, it's a football game. It's not a place for politics. Yet I don't think they realize that by choosing to say nothing, that is, in fact, a political decision. You are choosing to denigrate the life of Cassandra Perkins. You are choosing to not speak about the fact that this was the fourth suicide in the NFL in the last year. You're choosing not to talk about the links between violence against women and NFL players, which statistically is much higher than in the general population. You're choosing not to talk about this stuff, and that is political. So I applaud Bob Costas for saying what he said. I interviewed him this morning and spoke to him. He is not backtracking at all from what he said, but at the same time, he's also bewildered at and something that you've certainly experienced, David. I've experienced to a much lesser degree than you, but he's been put through the right-wing machine over the last week and really run through the ringer of people comparing him to Don Imus and Hank Williams Jr., who compared Obama to Hitler and calling for his job, and all of these things. And he can't believe that, I mean, Costas is shocked by this. Obviously, he doesn't spend as much time going to the Media Matters site or watching Fox News. But Costas, he just can't believe that saying that we have a gun culture problem in the United States would in any way be controversial. But guess what? It is.
Let's talk a little bit about the politics on the right. Is this all about the folks on the right, Fox News, simply they just don't want to have any discussion about the gun culture no matter what goes on, and that they will take any opportunity to try to say, hey, you know, we all have to stay in our lane, and Costas and the NFL, those are sports institutions, and they shouldn't be talking about social issues?
I think it's out of fear that they don't want to talk about it, because I think if you ask people in the NRA in moments where the cameras aren't there, they feel like they've won this issue. You know, they had to fight off Bill Clinton on the question of the NRA in the 1990s. Barack Obama has not raised anything about the NRA, even though we have these horrible killings in the United States, from spree killings to killings on the street corners of Chicago. Obviously, it's an issue in this country, the amount of guns that exist. I'll say this for what it's worth. I think in the NFL, and I've spoken to enough players to know this, it's not really a question of legality or illegality. It really is a question of gun culture, because if an NFL player wants a gun, they're going to get a gun. They have the money and resources to get a gun. If they say to somebody, I really wish I had a gun will show up at their house for them to have. But on the question of the NRA, I think that they hate this because it raises a discussion that they thought they were done with having. that they thought they would not have to debate this anymore. I mean, a horrible thing happens like in Aurora, Colorado, and they can get away with saying, wow, if only people in the darkened movie theater were armed, then maybe people wouldn't have been killed. And somehow that's okay to say that. It doesn't get raised at all in the presidential debates. And now here's Bob Costas imposing this discussion on the most watched broadcast of any show, according to the Nielsen ratings. And frankly, I think that scares them pantsless.
The NFL must have been scared pantsless as well by this entire episode in terms of what it does to the NFL brand. You've written and suggested that the NFL should have canceled the game. Explain what you were getting at.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the NFL should have canceled the game Sunday between the Chiefs and the Panthers. I mean, the NFL has said since then that it was the decision of the Kansas City Chiefs and they were going to abide by the decision of the Chiefs. I have no reason to doubt them that the Chiefs players wanted to play this game, but at the same time, I remain entirely unconvinced that this should even be the Chiefs' decision in the first place, for two reasons. First of all, I've interviewed NFL players. They always say the playing field is the most dangerous when you're distracted. Now, how could players not be distracted? Think about what they're processing. Not only that a teammate is dead, but that he committed suicide in their place of work and is a murderer as well. And they have to process all of this stuff within 24 hours and go out and play this violent game. That's the first reason. The second reason is that even if every single Kansas City player said, I feel totally like we need to do this, the NFL has a broader cultural responsibility. The NFL has the largest, most important, I would argue, cultural product that this country produces for domestic imbibing. I mean, not international. It doesn't really make inroads internationally, but for domestic use, if you will. The NFL should have said, you know what, Cassandra Perkins' life is worth more than this. We actually do need to take a few days, if for no other reason, out of respect for the dead. Otherwise, the message it sends is frankly just too monstrous.
Hey, what's your take on Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner? I mean, it would seem like he has a huge opportunity here if he would say, okay, instead of sweeping these issues under the rug, instead of not talking about violence against women, instead of not talking about the gun culture, we're going to use the platform of the NFL to try to help improve society. We're going to use the attention of the NFL to address these issues. What's keeping him from doing that?
What's keeping him from doing that is the potential that the NFL has over the next several years, according to their own projections, to grow from a $9 billion a year business, which already makes it the biggest professional sport by far in the country, double the size of something like Major League Baseball or the NBA, to being a $20 billion sport. I mean, being in the NFL right now, it's like having a license to print money, and yet the only thing that could cut the NFL off right now, the only thing that could turn it into something that over the next generation actually falls backward financially, is the growing realization that the sport is just dangerous to people's health. It's dangerous to people's interpersonal relationships. It's dangerous to the state of mind of people who play. When that becomes something that becomes part of the conversation in this country, you're going to see more parents keeping their kids from playing youth football, and you're already seeing that statistically, and you're also going to see more and more people turn away from the game. And so by confronting it, they're also confronting the possibility of their own demise, and I think that's what's keeping them from doing it in a much more socially conscious way.
Such a great point. We're talking with Dave Zirin from the Nation, and Dave, I guess the idea that when you talk about things other than breast cancer, because the NFL will talk a lot about breast cancer and have the players wear pink and all that, but when you talk about domestic violence or guns, that's somehow bad for business because people want to escape when they watch NFL football.
Exactly, and breast cancer can be the sort of thing where it's tangential to the sport or not connected to the sport, or if it's connected, it's only connected insofar as players speaking about their own wives, their own mothers, which is very touching and very important. And I'm not denigrating that work, but did you know, David, that there was a full-scale national campaign to, instead of having it be the pink month of breast cancer awareness, to have it be blue and pink, the blue being the color to raise the issue of domestic violence. And the NFL turned away from that campaign, refused to do it. And that, to me, says so much. It wasn't about counterposing domestic violence to breast cancer. It was about saying, you know what, both of these things are serious problems. You know, if a woman is the victim of a murder in this country, there's a reason why the first place everyone looks is at the husband, at her partner. This is where the violence comes from. And so the fact that the NFL wouldn't do that and wouldn't even respond to that petition, I think really says a great deal.
Finally, Dave, in the final minute we have left, folks who want to take some sort of action, who want to register their displeasure with the NFL, what should they be doing?
Wow, if people want to do something about the NFL, that is a great question. I mean, it's sort of like saying, do you want to be a fly on the behind of an elephant at this point? I think the number one thing, though, that people can do is, honestly, is to have these conversations. At most people's houses on Sunday, people walk into the sort of escape valve that is the National Football League. I'm not saying to people to stop watching. I'm not saying to people to boycott. But I am saying that if you're going to be a viewer of the NFL, if you're going to be a patron of the NFL, do it with informed consent. Do it with your eyes wide open as to the cost that's being paid on the field and, frankly, the cost that's being paid off the field in the lives of the families of the people who play.
Dave Zirin, sports writer for The Nation. He's also got a radio show on XM Sirius Satellite Radio. Dave, always great having you on the program. Thanks for coming on this weekend. We appreciate it.
Oh, my privilege, David. Thank you.
Take Action News continues after this.